Coach, you got 1 week to go until the season opener against Jacksonville State. Where do you think your team is in terms of being ready for the first game?
Yeah, I think it's about as ready as you're going to get. I mean, there's an anxious, I think, excitement that it's time to not just practice. And you're talking to a group of coaches and specifically myself that take a lot of stock in what practice means. And, constantly evaluating and how important every single day is, going all the way back to a January walkthrough or run through a meeting and stuff like that. So, but it at the same note, it's time. I mean, you get to that. I don't want to say it's stale, but at the same token, it's time to play real football. And so I think there's an expectation and anticipation within the group that day that the challenges await, and 7 days from now, we'll be your first one.
Alex, obviously I'm sure you're game prep for next week. Early look at Jacksonville State, a team that has about 50 newcomers as well, much like you guys, and also has a new head coaching staff and things like that. What can you do to prepare for a team like that when you don't maybe have as much game film and things like that to look at?
Yeah, you got to rule things out, and I don't mean from the standpoint of saying things they won't do, rule it out. I mean from a defensive standpoint. These are the rules that we've installed based on coverage, based on call versus formations, and zone drops versus man responsibility, how we react to motions or shifts and some of those things. You got to anticipate that everything is available to the opponent, and we'll see a heavy dose of all the above. What time has taught me, specifically with openers, even more so now, like you mentioned, as you dig into the archives, you can get a false sense of a reality that doesn't exist. They're different humans doing it literally at every position at times. And then when you add the component of a new staff, you can't assume they didn't do an off-season study on name that package that exists out there and stuff like that. And so you've got to be real careful to start talking about 100%ers or things you're going to see type of thing. So it's a major challenge, and one of the ways we try to train our guys is even going back to spring football is we don't go in and tell the guys, okay, this is what we're going to see today from the offense. And so you try to preload them to the best of your ability. Okay, we're new staff, we're new players, and everything else is put those guys in a position where they have to react and they have to trust their rules. As we tell them, if the rules don't work, we'll change the rules. But anyway, try to pre-install that as we've gone through spring football fall camp. But major challenge week one for everybody in the country, just is what it is.
What have you seen from the linebackers throughout this game?
Yeah, I would say a really consistent unit. I think from a production standpoint, fit standpoint, one of the things that you constantly look for is an explosive run. For instance, that happens in practice. By and large, there's 4 guys in front and 2/3 linebackers behind them. That you got to immediately turn to and say, okay, where was the deficiency? And so that hasn't been a consistent on a negative side of things. So again, it speaks to the consistency of the linebacker position. Coach D'Onofrio does a great job with those guys. There's a physicality about them. You know there's some both in the run game and the pass game, which is another evaluation tool that you have. You can't just be the equivalent of a trash can in coverage, kind of someone to throw the ball around type of deal. Like there has to be, as we describe, QB ball out break, that there's a purpose behind what you do. And sometimes you got to play man coverage, same thing. So I've been pleased with the group overall, and that's the position of all the positions in college football in particular is probably the most difficult. When you're talking about RPOs, quarterback run, sometimes it looks like never been to one, but it looks like a rave. It's pullers and backs going this way, and the quarterback keeps it, and that's tough for a linebacker. And so that shows again from a schematic standpoint, and again, Coach D'Onofrio does a great job with those guys. Been pleased because they get challenged on damn near every round.
What are you looking for from your defense the most in week one?
I would say effort. I think playing with a style of play that you can't have UCF fast in the weight room or make some claims and stuff like that because it sounds good or somebody puts it on a T-shirt. It starts with our head coach. He expects effort. He expects a different style of play than what most defenses are willing to give, and so that's our aim, our charge as defensive staff. Sort of marries up with what our beliefs are. But want to see these guys flying around, playing with effort, knocking things down when it's maybe cloudy, and maybe a play that otherwise would be a 10-yard gain get knocked down for a 5-yard gain, and even the ones that make you cringe, a 15-yard gain that otherwise would have gone much further type of deal. So you do that with effort.
Kind of going back to Matt's question, how much in the data collection and film collection standpoint are you juggling, saying when Clint Trickett did at Georgia Southern or at Marshall before that, and then how much are you kind of looking at the individual personnel of the players that they brought in from other places?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, and I don't claim to know what that exact percentage is. You'll know after the game, say, okay, that's they leaned on blank or something along those lines. And so again, you try to be a little bit more in the way of broad strokes. If they were calling plays at a particular, you go into the archives and they'll do the same thing. Well, were they calling that play because of the personnel they had, or is that really in their DNA, something that they wanted to do? And then same thing. In the meantime, did they go visit this NFL franchise or visit this team and then decide, okay, we're going to go in this direction type of thing. And so you again, I guess the best way to say it just broad strokes. Have an idea kind of who the personnel is. Look at maybe some of the snaps that they've had in their past, and then maybe a little bit in the way of again the DNA of the coaching staff, and then admit you don't know what you don't know.
Do you lean on? I'm just curious. Do you lean on Cam Fancher in all of this? He played for him at Marshall. So have you asked about any tendencies?
You know what? I haven't, and part of that just stems from I don't want to assume things that I could, for instance, 100% or definitely this or definitely that. I don't want to put Cam in that position.
What can fans expect to see from UCF's defense 1 week away?
Yeah, I mentioned the effort piece, and we'll have as many of these we do over the course of the season, and I'll say that every single time. The thing we tell our guys is the first thing we look at when we're watching video of practice, and we'll do the same thing in games. The first thing we look at is, did we get maximum effort by 11 guys? And if the answer is no, then I don't know what scheme is going to compensate, what call is going to compensate for guys giving lousy effort. So that's the starting point. And beyond that is there's got to be a physical brand. There's got to be a finish to the play that allows for the possibility of takeaways. A finish to a play that allows for ball carriers and piles to go backwards. And so it starts with that effort piece. The more population you get to the football, right, that you get that contact has a tendency to be more real to a ball carrier. And so you got to get there. Then the second piece is have some ill intentions as you approach that human. And again, it's fun to talk about, but you got to go do it. So we be excited to see though. You guys are ready to go play live football.
I know you're probably looking more at X's and O's right now and getting the depth chart set and looking at the first opponent. But for you personally, how much are you embracing this new opportunity, this fresh start at UCF?
Yeah, I think every season you start getting that itch. I don't know what that time frame exactly is, but you're excited to get back on the grass and then in the end ultimately tee it up and actually go play real football. It's so much turns into theory, and we like this, and we think we're going to be able to do that. And, juggling the pieces where it's the person talking to the guys about this game week now, it's personnel. Okay, who's going to be in the game? What percentage of the time you're going to be in the game, and all those things. And like the problem-solving aspect of things as well. And excited to be at UCF and cranking up.
Alex, along that line, a week away, how were you emotionally? I mean, players talk about being excited to step on the field when things are going on. How about you as a coach? How excited are you to get for the season to start? To start in a new program, to see what you guys have in front of you. How exciting is that for you, Ms. Moore?
Yeah, extremely so. Very, very anxious, and you get into coaching, and yes, you want to mentor guys. Yes, you do it for practice. If you don't like practice, you only play 12 games. It makes it. I can only imagine a miserable existence if you're only doing it for games. But on the same note, there's a reason we don't coach 7-on-7. There's a reason we build a career at a certain level because there's a style, there's a game coming in. This one Thursday, one on Saturdays that you want to be a part of, and think that you can, improve the chances of your unit to play at high level to win that ball game, and for the individual guys to play at their above their ability level because you're in the position meeting with them, when you were in the unit meeting with them. And so, again, you get a taste of it in practice, but no, awfully excited to be on the lights on Thursday night.
Is there anything you're most looking forward to learning about your defense in this first game?
Yeah, I think the fight is always different in a game than it is in practice. I mean, you try to simulate certain situations, but how do you attack adversity? And I mentioned it to the guys, and I mention it to them every week, and they'll get sick of hearing it. But the truth is, the only thing promised on a game day is adversity. A number of things can happen, positive, negative, and everything else, but you're going to get adversity. How we're going to respond to it. Again, we try to make note of it in practice and responded to a lot of the scenarios that we've given them, and I've given those guys credit for it. But there's a different emotional reaction to when there's seven points on the board, and you gave it up, as opposed to a practice where you just put the ball down and do it again. And so, anxious to see our response to those moments. And again, that's part of being a coach is preloading and training the guys for those moments and being in the fight with them and sticking with them just the same on the sideline as you're going through it. And the football gods have a tendency to reward those individuals that they can find adversity the best. And football gets a whole lot more fun. It gets hard, and you got to embrace that stuff. So that's the stuff that, again, you get a little bit of taste in practice, but that's why we play games.
You do a few more? How have you seen Coach Harris challenge the teammates throughout camp?
Yeah, I think Coach Harris and myself, it's our first time working together. Been extremely excited to work with him from a production standpoint. That's a nice starting point because it's maybe the easiest thing to evaluate. Had a productive fall camp, both and in spring football. The defensive second, getting hands on footballs, takeaways, and some of those things. And it's a pretty good test, right? If you're not in the right position, the ball is not going to find your hand. So, been pleased that way. And I think from the physical standpoint as well, it takes 11 guys to support the run. And then, we got position group back there, the 5 DBs that been pleased with, guys' willingness and expectation to put pads on people and stuff. Like, we got to cover, we got to run. But I think been very pleased with Coach Harris and instilling in those guys the physical aspect of play.
And how's it been to get on the same page with your coaches?
Yeah, I think that's a critical piece. You got a lot of new players, and you got new coaching staff coming together, and everybody has good ideas. And in the end, you got to make decisions what's best for the group here. We've had successes at other places, have had failures at other places, and you draw from those. In the end, it's not what you want to do; it's what's best for the group. It's the same thing as it applies to me. And I've said it a number of times over the last 8 months. Okay, this is how we did it. It doesn't mean that's how we have to do it. Okay, now let's have a conversation as we go through. And yes, you got to be on the same page and all working in the same direction. But very pleased with that thus far.
We're about to talk to a couple of your guys back here, Jaden Williams and Braden Marshall. Can you talk about that duo and what they meant to your group and what are your expectations of them?
Braden knows I'm mad at him for one playing practice, but no, Braden's done a really nice shot coming off. He wasn't able to participate in everything in the spring, and so again, new staff. All right, well, just everything is theory. Okay, if this happens, when that happens, you kind of live vicariously through everybody else, or in a walkthrough or something like that, that you can participate in. But I thought did a nice job hitting the ground running this fall camp, and it's going to be a major piece of the secondary for us. Again, been a very consistent guy. I think he draws from the game reps that he's had, and there's a maturity about him, which is critical to have, especially in the secondary. Some forces can work against you in terms of having lack of maturity in the secondary. It shows itself more than any other position in football, in my opinion. And so, been pleased with him. Excited to see him get a chance to go out there and play. And Jaden Williams, the guy that we added in the offseason, that's completely different, but something similar in that you don't get the reps and it's not just fall fit or 15 practices into the spring football. It's all the meetings and walkthroughs and that before and after, and you don't get a chance to participate in those things. And so it's got to be a crash course, and you got to learn from the video of other guys doing it, and then you hit the ground running. And where we've been at, especially with a new staff, and number one, this is a credit to the guys, is the ability to try guys at different spots in the secondary. again, one is because you don't know them well enough and trying to see, okay, what's the right combination of guys back there. That only works if they're able to do a lot in the way of skill sets. And so both those guys, Jay Will and V. Marsh, fit that category. And sometimes they get mad at me, because coach put me in another spot type of thing. But it's credit to them because we think they have the ability to do those things.
With regards to putting together the depth chart, you said it's not just about finding the starters, but finding that next guy right behind him. Who are some of the players over the course of a month that have kind of elevated themselves or put themselves in a position to be contributors as that next man up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of just specific names. Probably a better question just as we get maybe after game one, get a better idea once we can find a decision in terms of what that depth looks like. But 7 days out, have a conversation with the defense backs this morning. Okay, how do we do this? After Thursday's practice, make a determination what those rotations are even going to be, and it can change from a week out basis. And I think the pool of guys is probably larger. Sometimes it's easier as a coach when it may not be what's best from a coaching standpoint, but easier as a coach when you got, say, 5 guys, and it's very obvious that guy. Now, that's well and good as long as you don't have to ever take them out of the game. So what's best holistically is to have a group of guys that just say, okay, well, there can be a role for this guy. Maybe if we have a rotation and we can get the best version of all these guys if we do some of those things. So that's a decision that's not just maybe for the first game, but we made every single week, and it can change. And I give the guys examples over time, guys that were corners that second week of the season, they're a corner, and then all of a sudden they're nickel/safety, and those aren't made up stories. They're very, very real. Or a guy that was a starter that didn't find himself in the depth past the first couple of weeks. There's negative stories too. So anyway, it'll develop over time, and hard to again just because haven't completely come to the determination who those starters actually are yet. But I mentioned Jay McDonough as a linebacker coming in from Virginia Tech. Same some of the Jay Will that just didn't have the time with us. You just noticed that as a guy that this is a guy that you couldn't obviously earmark after spring because he wasn't in the program. But just you kind of take notice of some things.
All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks, y'all.